Hello everyone. Welcome to the beauty of the Exiles show. We are the Soundseekers. My name is Lady Zodiac, and my guests for today are Andile, Doria, Haida, and Jerome. We will be presenting to you today our powerful, wonderful stories. Our first storyteller for the day, it will be Lady Zodiac. Her topic of the story is called "The Sun Can Still Shine in the Darkness." Sometimes you are faced with a traumatizing situation whereby you don't see a way out of it. It is just so dark and thundery every day. You feel so helpless and so hopeless. It aches and pains so badly, and you are all alone in it. But meeting that one person that can help you make a life change by introducing some positive thoughts makes a huge difference. Someone that will make you realize that being sheltered in the darkest room isn't the end of the world. But you just have to appreciate that you have a shelter and believe that the situation isn't permanent. It's gonna just change one day. It's just a life phase that will someday pass. That itself will just bring out the best in you. And you will start building a different life for yourself. Despite the hardships, and you will believe that the outcome will be the best, and that sinking boat, someday, you will come out of it and make the best out of it. That positive mind that it builds. Likewise, being in a foreign land, it's a hard journey. You are faced with so many challenges, and the only means of transportation you know at that period of time is just a leap of faith. You are faced with so many sleepless nights, and you don't know how your tomorrow will look like. But having the right support system while in the process can make things seem so better, that instead of falling into deep depression, you will find yourself picking up those fallen pieces, and you'll start building yourself from that miserable and painful situation. You will start seeing the light in the darkness. The sun will start to shine, and you will eventually have the hope for the future. We all have different stories to tell. So many have made it out through that limbo with great achievements, through the support system that was offered to them during the process of hardships. Our next story, I'll present to you Andile. The topic is light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you, Lady Zodiac. Hi, and I'm here today to share to you my story. I would love to call it my success story, because this is a journey of my life that I have lived till date. I started out, I said, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I know many of you would say, where? Because we have heard that saying a lot of times. And some people lose the battlers during that tunnel. They don't get to see the light. But today, I'm here to assure you that if you fight right, you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. My story begins when I was a young girl. I was left by my mom in the care of my uncle, who did everything and anything unimaginable in this world to me as a little girl, as I was growing up and when I was grown. I fought every day of my life, to a point where sometimes I would give up, think it's over, until when I had a child, my firstborn, my first son. He became the reason for me to fight, because I knew he wouldn't fight for himself, so he depended on me. So I now had to fight for myself and fight for him. That's where the journey began, of me fighting through my tunnel, fighting to see the light. It was never easy. Originally, I'm from Zimbabwe. Now I reside here in Ireland. You can imagine the journey, even without me telling it out to you. As hard as it is to be an immigrant, it's much harder to become that immigrant. There were a lot of challenges for me to getting to Ireland, but somehow I managed to get to Ireland. And I remember when I got here, I felt lost. My life felt unusual. You may ask why. Because those were the first days of me being free. Me sleeping and waking up at my own time. It felt so unusual because it was something that I've never known in my whole life until the time I came to Ireland. My journey of healing, of fighting, and success began when I came to Ireland. I was assigned some few organizations to help me through my journey. And these organizations played a huge role on me. They changed my perspective in a very, very big way. I used to say, if I didn't get here and didn't get to meet these people, I wouldn't have known that life is beautiful. I remember I used to call myself the ocean girl because I used to cry every day. At some point, I'll be even praying, fighting with God, asking him why doesn't he give me the strength to fight instead of him feeding me tears to cry every day. But when I got here, I was surprised to see someone who's willing to listen. Because at some point, all we need is a listening ear to unburden ourselves. I was surprised to see someone who cares to help. And that really encouraged me a lot in healing. Because I was carrying so much anger, so much hatred for life, for everything. Because I felt like everybody didn't care about me. But when I got to Ireland, my eyes were opened. I remember in the lodge where I was staying, there was a December after I had gotten my papers. We were approached by a local newspaper to do a presentation of our countries, just presenting on what foods we make for our Christmases at home. And on that very interview, I remember saying it out that how I wish I could get a house in Clonakilty, as this has been my home, as this place has held me. Because that time, it was during the time where I had to look for a place and move out of the lodge. My heart was broken when I found a place in Cove. Not saying it's not a good place. It was broken because I was now moving out of my comfort zone. Moving out from the people whom I felt protected within. I moved to Cove. Tried to start afresh. It was a huge setback. It was a huge setback. But I realized that there are more wins in my life than for me to be worried of where I am. Because now there's communication. No one is restricting me from talking to anyone. No one is locked me up in some place where I can't even talk to someone. As I was trying to find peace and make it happen for me living in Cove, I was hit by a huge surprise. I had gotten a house back in Clonakilty. I remember that day I was so happy, to the extent that I couldn't even believe the letter that was in front of me. I had to send it to a friend and say, please read this for me. I was so happy. I was so happy. Now me and my boys, we call the house a gift from Santa, because it also happened in December, and we moved in Clone to celebrate our Christmas in Clone, where I would say, surely Santa got my letter on time. All my friends came, all the people that were close to me came. It was a huge celebration. I see all my friends who are still in the lodge. When they visit my house, you can feel the sense of freedom in them when they're walking around, when they're doing whatever they are doing. And that gladdens my heart, because I can see that hope is packed in them, knowing that they will be the next ones, which is how it has to be. When you're blessed, remember to be a blessing to somebody else. I know what they're going through. I have been there. There is no harm in me opening my home for them. I am talking to you now, my sister, my brother, my uncle, my aunt, my friend. Whatever situation you are facing in life, it shouldn't only be based on GBV. We are not only facing gender-based violence. It can be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be whatever that you're going through. Please fight. Seek help. Let others help you. Like I always say, if it wasn't for the people that helped me, the community that accepted me as their own, I wouldn't have made it. But I'm here today, sharing my story with a happy heart, because of all the help that I got along the way. All the circumstances, I've now come to believe that they are temporary. But it only depends on you. You have the power. If you don't fight, they will stay forever. But if you fight, that little spark, you will win. I made it. I'm here today, sharing my story. my success story. So can you. If you start fighting, if you start looking for help, don't be ashamed. Look for help, and that will help you a lot. This is a sign for you to start fighting. It's a time for you to start talking. Don't be oppressed. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Look for help in the right places, and you shall find it. Remember, there is always light in the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andile, for sharing your love story with us. It was really a love story with a happy ending. Thank you for that. Do you want to say anything about the story?
Actually, it's sad story and lovely.
Yeah, it is indeed. It was really lovely at the end of it. Anyone else?
Yeah, it is a lovely story that anybody who's new in a country or anyone who's an immigrant will feel encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now our next speaker, it will be Doria.
Hello, everyone. My name is Doria. I'm going to tell you a motivating story about the power of resilience. I grew up in a very remote and poor village. Most families in our village had one, if not only 2 meals a day. In my family of 4, that was my dad, my mom, my little brother, and I, was more pathetic. Like most villagers, my parents had no formal job. We had to survive through my father's part-time jobs. For many years, I went to school barefooted, walking a long distance of 3 kilometers to and from school on cracking hills. The roads were dusty during the dry season and muddy during the rainy season. It was an awful situation. I carried books in a plastic bag that was made from an empty milli-meal bag that had a red company logo on it. You can imagine the situation. I could hardly carry any lunch to school because there was nothing. I loved school so much, and I was intelligent too, but it was hard to survive the situation. I remember at times I used to cry when other children laughed at me at my cracked heels. When I finished my high school, I got into serious depression because my parents could not afford to take me further with my studies. Although I had passed with flying colors, I was stuck at home. I had nothing to do. Most of the days I would sit and bask behind the poor mud hut and would start sobbing out my misery, feeling useless and having no purpose in life. I remember at one point, a thought of committing suicide crossed my mind. Thanks to the birds that usually chirped and tweeted from the trees, I sat alone quietly. It sounded as if they were saying, "Don't you worry, it shall be okay." They somehow always distracted me away from the thought of ending my life. It was one day, though, that was 3 months after doing nothing except for the part-time jobs here and there, that I remembered Anderson, one of the villagers who had come to visit his family over the Christmas holidays. He had shared about how great the neighboring country was. He had told me about the good opportunities and the good life there. I saw my face smiling from a reflection. Something had come into my mind. Wow, I should try to get there and start a new life. I had a bit of money that I had saved, and it was going to take me there. That same evening, I put myself together and got ready to tell my parents about my plan, even though I was shaking like a leaf about their responses. Like most kitchens in the village, ours was also made of a simple mud, round in shape and thatched. My dad used to sit next to the door in his wooden chair. My mom, my little brother, and I would always sit far inside the hut, next to the mud-fitted cupboards. The center of the hut was the fireplace. We used a candle for light. We finished our supper, and I waited for a moment of silence. Mom and Dad, I have decided to go to the neighboring country and look for greener pastures and to try and make money to further my studies. The room was quiet for some time as they tried to digest what I had just said. I was desperate for their response at that time. My father then broke the silence, starting by clearing his throat, followed by a husky voice. I heard you, my daughter. Yes, I give you my blessing. But I'm worried, though, that you are still a young lady, and you may not be safe out there. Anyone can take advantage of you. I wish I could help the situation and take you to college, but I can't afford it, he sobbed. My mom uttered no word, but kept on sighing, showing disbelief of what I had just said and in hesitation. However, I convinced them to the point of understanding. I even lied to them that Anderson had promised that he would help me find a job when I got to the neighboring country. And that gave them a little peace of mind. I was doing this for them to let me go and not to worry too much. My aim was to fight poverty that was hovering in our family and get money for my college studies. I had to do it. Oh yes, I had to be resilient. 3 days later, I packed my poor bag that I had borrowed from my little brother. I had to cross one of the most dangerous rivers since I had no passport to go to the neighboring country, but I had to go. Many were using the same dangerous route anyway. There were still going to be some challenges further trying to get to the big city of the neighboring country for a job. I had to walk through the bushes from the river to the main road for hikes, and I had to avoid going through roadblocks because if by any chance police could discover that I was an illegal immigrant, I could be deported straight away. I approached Mike, the shop owner, who was known for assisting people into the neighboring country. Mike was very helpful with information. He communicated with his friend Joseph, who was going to help me cross into the neighboring country. It was his job anyway, and people paid him for his services, even though it was illegal and dangerous. The day to leave came. I kissed my family goodbyes and left in the morning at around 5. It was a sad moment leaving my family, not even sure if I was going to do the right thing, not even sure if I would make it to the big city of the neighboring country, not even sure if I was if I will survive with the little money that I had, not knowing where I was going to sleep. My mom waved her hand to me and quickly gave me her bag into her heart, and I knew immediately that she was in deep pain about the whole situation. My father stared at me in silence, and my sleepy little brother said, "Bye, Sissy, bring me some sweets." I dragged my feet off to the bus stop, but I had to be resilient. The bus came and hovered through the dusty roads and got me to the nearest town regardless. I also managed to locate Joseph. He was waiting for me. A very massive and bold enough body to do this kind of a job indeed. He gave me advice before we left for crossing and warned me that there would be hyenas in the thick forest and that we needed to be silent as we walked through. He also warned me of crocodiles in the river and that he did not guarantee a successful crossing to anyone he helped. God, I sighed, as I felt butterflies in my tummy. I felt really scared, but I had to do it. I had to be resilient. The waters were silent and blue. I stood there nervously, watching the river. My eyes were over the waters and the muddy riverbanks, scanning for any motion, lest it could be the crocodiles. It was traumatic to think that I had to cross there. Joseph instructed me to follow him to a rocky area. That was where I was going to cross. Wow, in 10 minutes we had crossed the dangerous 60-meter wide river. The next challenge was to try and get a hike to the big city. Joseph walked me a kilometer to the bus stop, and he went back. I stood there alone for almost an hour, trying to stop cars with no luck. Eventually, a car stopped by. I felt safe because the driver was a lady who knew maybe she could help. When she was stable on the road, she started the conversation. It is then that I managed to tell her my story. She was actually shocked that I had the guts to take so much risk. It was not expected from a young lady like me. It was quiet again for a while in the car. I could see she was feeling sorry for me. At that moment, I tried to roll my eyes around inside the car, making sure that she didn't notice my curiosity. Her daughter sat behind on the back seat, and she was playing games on her tablet. Next to her was a food takeaway box. It looked like there was food inside and a bottle half filled with juice. I could tell there was some leftovers inside. I felt so hungry, but I was too shy to ask. By the way, the time was 12 noon, and I had not eaten anything, and I was tired from walking. I could smell a bad odor from my armpits due to sweat. I sat tightly so that the bad smell could not reach her somehow. She was a superwoman, I concluded. She wore a beautiful wig and had her nails painted red and had red lips on a mild makeup. At 6 p.m., she dropped me in the big city. She could not help me with much more, but she gave me her number on a piece of paper and told me to ring her in 2 weeks' time in case she got any job for me. She refused to take my money for the hike. That was a blessing to me because I still had a bit of money on me. I crossed the streets and robots in town as if I knew where I was going. I saw a signal to a hospital and I decided to follow it. At the hospital, it was busy, in and out. No one could notice me until It was around 10 at night when the streets around were becoming quiet. A security guard came to me and asked if I was okay, but before I replied, his phone rang. I was surprised that he was speaking in one of our home languages. That gave me confidence to talk to him. When he finished his call, I was already crying and got his sympathy. I explained my situation to him. He was not allowed to let me stay or loiter around the hospital at night, but he advised me to try and hide behind the tall buildings for the night and promised that he will talk to his friend who was working as a cleaner in the morning at the hospital. She could accommodate me into her shack. I walked behind the buildings, ate my bread, and curled myself into a corner against the walls until it was the next morning. The next morning, I went back to the security guard. He had already spoken to the lady. Her name was Mimi. What a kind woman she was. She told me to wait for her to finish her duties, and we left together to her house. By 12 noon, we were already at her place. She advised me to take a bath immediately. I could sense she couldn't stand my odor from the sweat, although she tried hard not to show it. She gave me food, and I finished bathing. Then she took me to the shack at the back of her house, and she allowed me to stay until I got a job. I didn't complain because that was more than enough to assist me start a life. I had to appreciate it. She was using the shack as a storeroom, by the way. The other side of the shack was pegged with old dusty furniture, and an old bicycle wheel hung from the broken ceiling. She gave me a mat and 2 blankets to use. I prepared to sleep on the floor. Before blowing the candle off, I grabbed my little brother's bag to use as a pillow. Then I looked at it. I shed tears again, thinking of him and my parents. Yes, life was tough, I said to myself, but I had to be positively resilient to win. I had to be strong. Mimi had offered to dish food for me every day. I had to wake up in the mornings and roam around the streets in the township, talking to people in search for a job. When the 2 weeks went by, on a Thursday, I asked Mimi to borrow me her phone, and I rang the lady who had given me a lift. Fortunate enough, she was excited to hear from me and told me that she had been waiting for me to call because she had got me a job to mind her colleague's child. She came the next day to fetch me. I thanked Mimi and her 2 children for being so kind to me. The job began to shed some light to my life. I worked as a childminder, and during weekends I took extra cleaning jobs. I could afford to support my family back home and saved enough money to go back home for college and enough to sustain my family while I was at college. It was not easy to make that decision again, but I had to do it because going to college was going to be a ladder to a better life for me, hence a better life for my family too. I had to do it. I had to be resilient. I went back to my home country as planned. I opted for a 1-year auxiliary course, and it got me a reasonable job for qualifying as a nursing assistant. I continued to study part-time until I got my nursing degree. A few years later, I was promoted to a senior position at the hospital. My life and that of my family improved until today. The power of resilience saw us through the success. My family is happy. I am now happily married, and we have a beautiful daughter. I'll teach her not to allow failure in her life. I would teach her to be positively resilient in order to reach her goals in life.
Wow, such a strong story. That was The Power of Resilience by Doria. Thank you so much, Doria, for sharing your story with us. It was so emotional. I feel so emotional right now. Would you mind sharing with us what motivated you to write the story and share with us today?
It's because in my life and in other people's lives, I've seen and picked that success is usually from being resilient, being strong, not allowing anything to be an obstacle, not allowing anything to stop what you want to achieve. Thank you.
Oh, that's a great one. Thank you so much. What do you think, guys, about Doria's story?
It's a very nice story. Emotional.
Yeah, it was emotional.
It is a deep story with a great meaning and a great lesson in it. Surely resilience is the answer. Thank you for sharing with our story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our next guest, it will be Haida, the Dark Tunnel.
My name is Haidar Jafar, and I am an asylum seeker and a journalist from Iraq who lives in Cork with the refugees from all over the world. I have tasted the suffering and eliminations because of the condition in my country. A refugee, a person who leaves their country and seek asylum to reset in the country other than their home. This can be reason related towards armed or conflict by the ethic or religion. For the political reason related or identity, idea and beliefs. This can cause the person experience restrictions and which force them to leave their country in the order to seek asylum. The word refugee was historically and protection as the custom community of perfect the refugee in country. The first country experienced asylum, whereas the description was my country, Iraq, which has suffered from many calamities. Some country appear racist by not giving priority to this country. To this day, there is no appearance of the elements of French to giving full right to citizen when they requested asylum in another country. This is the policy of the country do not to acknowledge the dangerous facet of some people in Iraq. The tragedy of the Iraq refugee was long and around and absurd and last for more than 3 decades. Their first immigration for political reason include a few thousand in the last civilization. During the period of the Iran and Iraq War, 98 and 1988, tens of thousands of people were forced immigrant and asylum seeker. The birth of the international blockade was one of the most miserable seasons of asylum, especially due the economy forced hundreds of thousands of people forced seeking a political humanitarian asylum. Include huge number of refugees feeling abroad and visit a moment of internationally displaced persons. Here in Ireland, refugee and asylum policy were very weak. Everything was not well enough out. It was confused. Protection and asylum in some cases without valid reasons because its sins depended not on the law and the constitution, but they are according to the interpretations or the case office, by the case office. Other reasons like the housing crisis, there must be open policy that not missing and not discriminatory. There is housing and work crisis, discriminations and racism in employment problem with the direct purchase system. I would like to thank all of you for giving me a chance to share some conversation on my experience in Ireland.
Thank you so much, Haida, for sharing your story with us. Would you mind, anyway, telling us what you like mostly about story writing?
Actually, I write about political and analyze.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What do you think, Angela, about Haida's story?
You know, it is really sad, you know, that some countries would not shelter other countries in need. But I'm grateful for him that he found a place that can accommodate him and he can also feel safe regardless of where he comes from.
Thank you, Angela, for sharing. And you, Doria?
I'm just happy that he can speak out, and I hope you encourage others to speak out as well and share their grievances. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker, it will be Jerome. It will be the interview with Michelle.
Coordinator of the McKees program in Waterford.
Okay, and that's part of the Waterford Area Partnership. Okay, and briefly tell us about the McKees program and what you do and what that's about.
The McKees program is an integration program through education for asylum seekers and refugees, including undocumented migrants.
Okay, so roughly how many people, and when did the McKees program start actually?
So the McKees program started in 2017 with the Integration and Support Unit in Waterford, and then moved to Waterford Area Partnership in 2018, and we've been running through there since then. And what else did you ask me?
No, just when it started.
Yeah.
And so since the start of the McKees, how many people have you seen come through the McKees program?
Okay, we've seen about over 65 people have come through.
Over 65, that's a huge number.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so how successful has the McKees been since the start of it?
Well, I would consider it a very successful program. You know, in comparison to the statistics we see in other educational programs, you know, we have statistics that over 90%, up on 94% of our participants have either progressed on to further education or into employment. The difference probably with the program is it has a huge integration focus, because obviously people come to this country, they don't know this country historically, so they have to get familiar with systems and structures in Ireland. They have to get familiar with the education structure, so even though they might have master's degrees, even for some doctorates in their home country, you still have a disadvantage of you've missed 18 years of prior educational experience in the education system in Ireland, and you have to get on track with that very rapidly and very quickly. And
so let me ask you this. So what do you consider, so you being the coordinator, what do you consider, like, you know, when clients come through your door, and, you know, from the moment they come through your door to the moment that they leave the program, you know, what do you consider, what do you hope for, what do you look at, how do you see success, their success?
Success is somebody feeling like they belong in this country and that they have a place in this country and that they can envision building their life, that they know what steps to take from after they progress from my program, that they know what they need to do to get to where they want to be. And if you come into this country and you don't have any supports, there's a far greater likelihood you could end up maybe unemployed, or maybe don't progress in learning the English language strongly if you've not been exposed to it before, and become isolated. So success is the ability to overcome all these barriers in order to build a life that you aspire to have.
But so then that poses the question, out of your clients and the people you've dealt with, how do they see success? Like, if that's ever come up, what do they see success as?
Well, that's a tricky one to answer, because you will see, for a lot of people who arrive in the country, there's that. Obviously and understandably there's that urgency to get out there and get working and to be earning money to support themselves and their families, and I'm completely with that and completely about that. The problem can be that they don't know Ireland well enough and might lean into what's the popular go-to for work that they hear about in the direct provision system, which generally is something along the lines of caring, forklift drivers, delivery drivers, maybe working in, the restaurant hospitality industry. But I've seen so many people who have so much more talent and potential than just that sector, unless that's exactly the sector they want to work in and what they've been working in historically. So I guess success is trying to bridge the gap between the skill set they have from back home and what they're able to move forward with here. And that can be a major challenge. But I've seen people you look at yourself, you came through the programme in 2017. Can I speak about this? You were homeless when you came to the set, but you are creative by nature. You always have been creative. You've always been about production and some kind of media and that side of things. And we see you growing in that field all the time now. And it wasn't just that you got into media production. You made choices in your life to make sure you could integrate as actively as possible in Ireland, and you used that opportunity to get to know people, because people, maybe have this, I don't mean to drift off point, but it ties in with what we're talking about. People coming to the country have this illusion. I was just speaking to, one of my clients the other day. They've just arrived here in DP. They're in a little bit of a state of shock that they've just come to the realisation that they can't work for 6 months, and they're missing their family and they're in a difficult situation. And you're just there going, the best thing you can do is what you would do back home. Get to know people. And don't be afraid of white people. Because sometimes people believe we won't talk. Then there's a lot of assumptions that we don't talk to each other and we don't communicate. And it's no different to any other country on the planet. There's a whole network of community always going on. So you start getting to know people. Someone's going to recommend something to you. Someone's going to encourage you. Oh, did you try this? Or I know this person. in this field. Like I have one woman who came through my program, she's from Afghanistan, and you know, she's very obviously learning English was a major challenge for her, and you know, has been a major challenge for her. But she has gotten ahead because she was willing to talk. She's brave, very brave. She's like completed a train the trainers, which got her connected to, you know, professors in a university who were very interested in her story, who wanted her to deliver a training there, and she was a teacher back home. So she's going into her skill set, and she's not even at the top of her league yet, even in the English language, but she's doing it, and that's success. You know, it's the people who are successful get to know the country they're in, and they don't be afraid of that. And if they are afraid, they have the courage to ask people how to get ahead. And that's what's involved. Is it's always about getting to know people, because then you get the information you need. Then you get that little inkling of information that's going to open that doorway for you. Obviously, there's some fields like we have. Speaking of Afghanistan, I have this a number of years back. This Afghani gentleman was around the program, and he is an orthopedic surgeon in his home country. Now he can't work at that, but he had to go in and train. But he's so determined to get back into his field, so he's gone and trained as a medical secretary and is progressing through the systems. Now, in one way you go, that's really humiliating, and that's another discussion for another day. My issues with, you know, how people of such a skill set can come into the country and are not able to transition easily. That's a separate debate than what we're talking about today. But his success story is he is not letting this stop him. He's going to make sure he gets back into the field of what is his expertise.
Okay.
Do you understand what
I hear you.
Now, I don't, and I have to say, put me in that position, I don't know if I do that. I really don't know. So I have an awful lot of admiration and respect for that.
So, last question. What is the biggest drawback that you see, you know, when it comes to migrants, and, you know, the biggest holder, you know, what holds them back more to achieve what they would potentially achieve?
Well, I don't know whether it's just migrants or it's everyone on the planet. The only thing that will hold you back is if you believe the barrier will stop you. But if you want to get forward and move forward, then your mind will make sure you connect with somebody who can help you negotiate around it, or that you know you need to learn some, like it could be even, you know, arriving in this country and you've never spoken English in your life. But then you start learning how, that's a massive barrier. But if you start learning the language, you're moving beyond that barrier, aren't you?
Yeah.
So it's just, how do you move around these barriers? And when there's a will, there's a way. Some of it may be time consuming and a bit uncomfortable for people at the time when they've lived a whole life already before. But, like I say, you can get there.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much,
Thank
Michelle,
you,
for your
Jerome.
input. And, hopefully we get to talk to you soon.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
So, what is your own definition for success like?
I would say success is when you're able to achieve your goals. And I would add to, I know you asked about success, but I want to give you a comment on his interview. Something interesting when he talks about, when she mentions issues that have got to do with immigrants coming in the country and not getting the jobs that they deserve with the skills that they have. It's an experience that many of us have seen, we have experienced that as well. And I wish Ireland there's a system whereby it can recognize people's skills and place them to their right positions that they deserve. That would be a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Doria, for sharing. Who else have something to say about the interview or regarding success?
To myself, I totally agree with what my colleagues have said. But I also like to say that success is moving from point A and getting safely to point B. Regardless whether it's job-wise, career-wise, health-wise, or even marriage-wise, success is in everything that we do. That is why today here on Soundseekers we are bringing our success stories. Because every day, everything we do is success. So I totally love the interview that they did, all the points they highlighted. They're very sensitive and
yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So this is it for the day. We can wrap it up like for the day now. So what do you think in general, the final thoughts of everything that have been shared today?
It's good to share stories. It's good to share experiences. It motivates us in one way or the other. Thank you.
Yeah, and we do learn a lot from each other for our own growth, like it's and our physical health and emotional, like you know how to overcome some of the things that you undergo from someone else. Yeah, thank you.
Actually, the sharing is very important to share the point with the people, and they see our suffering or our experience in the life, so that make them so happy.
Thank you.
yeah, sharing is very good because what I believe is whenever you talk, you are a voice for someone else, which always helps to get the message across, even for those who cannot speak for themselves. So it is always very good when you're in a position where you can talk, where you can share, where you can motivate, to always do it because you are always a voice for someone else who cannot do it for themselves.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. We hope our listeners enjoyed our show for today. Is the beauty of the Exiles. We are the Soundseekers. Thank you for listening to us and for joining our show today. Goodbye. Lisale kahle.
Musale zvakanaka.
Nisale kahle.
Maasalama.
Coño, cola cuata.